A young man with brown hair studies alone at his desk. His fingers tap impatiently on a thick stack of books. A radiant shalala sounds as he beams happily at his phone.
While procrastinating on social media instead of studying, the brown-haired man notices a strange post, wondering what it is.
His expression turns serious as he reads the post's simple instruction. The post offers a tempting choice: share to enter a fictional world, but be trapped until the story's end. Calling the post lame, he smirks and copies the link anyway. He texts a friend teasing about the post, but claiming he'll wait until after exams to press the button, ending their chat with a craving for chicken feet. With a final click, he turns off his phone for the night. Exhausted, he flops onto his bed with a soft thwomp. He glances back at his desk, worried about all the revision he still has to do. Deciding sleep is more important. He pulls the covers up with a rustle, rationalizing that exams will be over soon. He daydreams about celebrating with his friends after his exams are done. He also eagerly anticipates catching up on his video games. As he drifts off, a strange whoosh breaks the silence, making him wonder what the noise is. Mysterious voices celebrate that he pressed the button and debate sending him away. As the voices note his lack of genre preference, he groggily wonders if he's dreaming and tells them to be quiet. The voices decide to send him into the last book he read before wishing him farewell. As a magical book glows in the void, he feels a sudden chill, but is too tired to investigate. He shivers, realizing with a start that his covers are gone. A bright light envelops him, and he wakes up outside, confused, now a small, fluffy white bird. A dramatic dune sounds as he takes in the giant grass around him, utterly bewildered. With a resounding doo-doom, he panics, desperately wondering what is happening. Overwhelmed and confused, his thoughts are a blur as he lets out a small peep. He realizes with a shock that the grass is as tall as him and the trees are immense. The sheer impossible scale of the world around him is stunning. His mind feels fuzzy and he can barely form a coherent thought. Feeling like his brain has shrunk, he resolves to escape, but immediately stumbles. He wobbles unsteadily on his tiny feet, questioning his new body. Unable to walk straight, he faceplants into the grass with a slap. He tries flapping his wings, but they just slap uselessly against the grass. He grows incredibly frustrated with his clumsy, useless new body. With a sudden gasp, he wonders if this is all just a dream. Concluding that the landscape is just massive, not that he is small, he rushes forward. He's already out of breath, cursing the dream for feeling so physically real. After all that effort, he peeks out and realizes he has barely moved at all. Dejected, he continues his slow steps, muttering about the stupid dream. His stomach rumbles loudly, and the pang of real hunger makes the dream feel terrifyingly vivid. He wonders if this is a lucid dream, desperate for it to end so he can wake up. The sky is clear and bright above the endless screen. Suddenly, a cage drops from above with a whoosh. It lands with a loud clang, trapping him inside. The latch clicks shut, and he sits stunned and silent inside the cage. The truth finally hits him with a wave of despair. He's really a bird, and his entire reality is a lie. A blond man approaches as the tiny bird quivers in its cage. A red-haired man excitedly points out the strange new bird to the smirking blond man. A small crowd gathers, admiring the cute little cotton ball and debating its species. With the blonde, a man with a mustache compliments the charming fellow, and a bald man with a white beard confirms it's a recent catch. The men continue to chatter, oblivious to the terrified bird between them. A wave of gloom washes over the bird as it hangs trapped by the window. A shaky view of a room full of bird cages fills with a sudden rattle and clatter. Pushing against the bars, The bird thinks it can't stand this any longer. It lets out a defiant tweet, challenging a nearby man who looks on in surprise. It chirps menacingly, warning anyone who gets close to go away or get pecked. The scene shifts to a quaint building labeled Draw Shop.
With a sad slump, the bird reflects that it once believed this was all a dream.
After days trapped, it finally accepts the horrifying truth. It's really a bird. The bird quivers indignantly on its perch. A young brown-haired man stares intently at the agitated bird.
The brown-haired man notes the bird is having a fit, but the bald shop owner dismisses it as just being cranky.
Overhearing this, the bird fumes, thinking, "I'll show you, cranky." With a loud rattle and screech, it thrashes in its cage, causing the man to flinch back.
The startled man makes a hasty exit while the shop owner cheerfully tells him not to be a stranger.
Alone again with the shop owner, the bird lets out a questioning tweet.
It tilts its head, silently wondering about the man.
Deciding to keep its strength up, it hops over to the food bowl.
It crunches on the dry, bland food, crying because it hates it so much.
Night falls, bringing with it a sense of gloom and confinement.
The empty shop is silent and dark.
Every night, its mind races with questions about what happened and how to get home.
It remembers its human life, wondering how it went from celebrating with friends to being a bird.
It notes that everyone around is dressed like they're from an old-timey movie. It recalls texting its friend, insisting it hadn't actually pressed the button. The horrifying realization hits with stunning clarity.
With a desperate slump, it collapses, unable to accept the truth.
This can't be happening, it thinks, flapping a wing uselessly.
Suddenly, the bald man approaches, mug in hand, as the bird panics. The man's expression is one of slight concern.
The cage begins to move, and the bird peeps in alarm, wondering what's happening. It gets motion sick on a bumpy cart ride, tweeting desperately for the cover to be taken off.
A wave of deep annoyance washes over it. With a loud crash, the cover falls, and a voice complains about the noisy bird.
After a long time, the movement finally stops. Now stationary, it wonders about their destination and the rush to get there.
It looks up, still questioning why this is all happening. Two men discuss why a duke would suddenly want a pet, concluding it's just a new trend for high society. The bird scoffs at being a fashion statement, as one of the men admits such trends are beyond them.
It rages internally, calling them selfish swine for treating animals like trophies.
With a clack, the scene shifts to an opulent room where three men wait.
A large door creaks open slowly.
A man with dark hair enters the grand room where the others have gathered with the covered cage. The man's formal attire is elegant and detailed. Hidden under the cloth, the bird can't see the man's face.
Still, it can sense an air of charisma about him.
The charismatic man takes a step forward. He comes to a stop before the assembled group. With a weary slump, the bird assumes he must be some pompous boor. The cloth is pulled away, revealing a magnificent, growling black beast instead of the bird.
The tension in the room is palpable as the snarling beast is presented to the seated dark-haired man. A close-up reveals the beast's sharp teeth and dripping saliva.
With a nervous gulp, the blond man with a mustache holds the beast.
A chain strains with a cur before snapping with a loud clang.
The dark-haired man faces the beast's ferocious roar. The little bird peeks, hoping the scary beast frightened the man.
A close-up shows the man's elegant, undisturbed formal wear. A faint, confident smirk appears on the man's face. With a whoosh, he easily dodges the beast's lunge.
The bird tweets anxiously, fearing the man has a weapon and calling him a monster.
Flapping its wings, it complains that people used to care for animals properly. Growling with indignation, it thinks no one who treats animals badly can be a good owner.
It resolves to show him by breaking out of the cage.
With a clang and rattle, the blond man presents the broken chain to the seated Duke. The beast is thrown to the ground with a loud crash and rattle. The Duke's eye twitches slightly at the commotion. Looking past the chaos, he coolly asks what's in the covered cage. The scene flashes back to moments before at the Duke's residence. An attendant asks the Duke if he should dismiss his guests for the day. The weary Duke decides to see them since they're already waiting. He decides he might as well get the meeting over with. He recalls seeing nobles showing off exotic birds as pets. With a dramatic dune, he remembers a rival's son parading a hawk at school. He recalls his younger brother's tantrum, wanting a pet just like his friends. The Duke explains he agreed to choose a pet and hired the best seller. He recalls rejecting previous animals for being too wild and aggressive. Just as he considered another seller, a loud thud caught his ear. Back in the present, the Duke asks what is in the cage. He gestures with a whip, beckoning the men forward. The pet sellers sweat nervously as they prepare the presentation. A gloved hand places the covered cage down with a clack. The cage rattles beneath the red cloth cover. The bald shop owner explains that it is a small bird. He pauses, adding that he doubts it's to his grace's liking. The Duke questions why he brought it, and the owner nervously affirms he did. The owner describes the bird as small and fierce, but the Duke says he doesn't mind. A hand lifts the cloth, telling the creature inside to be still. The bird erupts in a loud squawk, rattling and screeching in its cage. After its fit, it hops to a stop, looking furious. It puffs out its chest with a triumphant ta-da, as if to say, "Take that!" The Duke looks down, his expression calm and unbothered. He stares intently at the tiny, defiant bird. The bird demands to know if he's impressed, then pouts. It lets out another sharp fweet to get his attention. The bird chirps once more, but the Duke remains silent, just watching. Angrily flapping its wings, the bird demands to know what he's looking at. It flaps its wings again, telling him to look away before giving up. The Duke wonders if the tiny bird is ignoring him. As he thinks with a the bird suspects an intimidation tactic. He realizes with a slight smile that it's more than just ignoring him. Surrounded by flowers, the bird has a sudden thought. He likes me? The owner warns the Duke that the bird is difficult and will bite, as the bird dares him to repeat it. It angrily retorts that anyone would be mad in its talons. As the owner offers a new selection, the Duke firmly states he'll take this one. The owner agrees to send the needed equipment as the bird fumes below. With a final clatter, the bird damns the owner as a poaching suck-up. The cage door shuts with a definitive clank and a rattle. As the cage is set down with a clunk, a voice confirms the placement. With a soft clack, the cage is placed on a table before the Duke. The Duke sits with a white-haired attendant, observing his new pet. The bird sits silently, its back turned to its new owner. The Duke sizes it up, thinking it's a curious bird. He recalls extending his mana, which caused the bird to screech loudly. He muses that he planned on getting a handsome beast for Arthur. He imagines a boy named Arthur complaining about receiving a bird as a present. Then he pictures Arthur hugging the cage with pure joy. He also imagines Arthur dramatically setting the bird free out a window. The white-haired attendant asks if he should send the bird back. The Duke declines, deciding he likes the little creature. He touches the cage, admitting he's not sure if Arthur will feel the same. He requests his lunch from the attendant, Claude, who promptly agrees. The Duke lifts the cage, looking curiously at the bird inside. In a state of shock, the bird has flopped onto its back. Lying there helplessly, it realizes it's completely screwed. With a flop and a roll, it despairs at being sold into slavery.
The Duke watches it roll, admitting to himself that it looks cute.
A door closes with a clack as the Duke enters another room. His hand rests on a handwritten letter at his desk.
He gazes down at his work with a focused look.
Overwhelmed, he sighs that his life is nothing but work. A report details that tax rates aren't covering Sevon's expenses. The report concludes by asking for his approval on proposed changes.
The Duke sits at his desk, diligently reviewing the documents.
He reads a letter, reflecting that people can change. A knock-knock interrupts him as he decides to review things later. Holding a pen, he smoothly calls for the person to come in.
Claude enters, pushing a cart with the Duke's meal.
The attendant carefully places a plate on the Duke's desk.
An overhead view shows a perfectly prepared plate of sliced steak.
The Duke orders Claude to list all estates with recent tax hikes.
He takes a sip from his cup while still reviewing a paper. A knife and fork expertly slice through the grilled steak.
The Duke closes his eyes, about to savor a piece of meat. He suddenly pauses, fork held mid-air.
His eyes are drawn to the sparkling birdcage across the room.
The little bird stares back, its eyes twinkling with hope.
A small peep makes the Duke wonder if the bird wants some food. He scoffs at the idea, blaming overwork for his strange thoughts. He pauses again, the tempting morsel held close to his lips.
The bird drools and lets out a longing coo, its eyes glued to the food.
The Duke asks Claude if they have any bird food, surprising him.
Claude replies that while he doesn't have food from the shop, he brought something else.
Claude sets down a jar with a loud clack.
The Duke asks what's in the jar, and Claude replies that it's insects called wallons for the bird.
After wiping his mouth, the Duke asks Claude if insects ever eat birds. Confused, Claude answers that he doesn't believe they do. The Duke gestures to the cage, asking what that looks like to him. A terrifying vision of an insect looms with a dramatic dune. The bird imagines a creepy praying mantis, sending chills down its spine. It envisions being attacked by the bug, screaming for help with a thwack. Panicked, it peeps desperately for the monster to stop. Claude calmly holds a single tiny insect on a stick near the cage. The bird erupts in a terrified frenzy, rattling the cage with a clatter. With a great whoosh, the bird bursts free from its cage. Claude looks on in shock as the bird escapes. He cries out, "Ack," in stunned surprise at the sudden breakout. The bird furiously pecks Claude's hand in retaliation. Claude panics, flailing and screaming about the disgusting bugs he was offered. A gloved hand reaches out to catch the flapping bird. With a whoosh and a defiant fweet, the bird dodges the attempt to catch it. The Duke effortlessly plucks the tiny bird from the air. With a swift turn, he holds the struggling bird in his palm. The Duke stands calmly in the ornate room, holding his captured pet. He looks down at the bird with a thoughtful, serious expression. Held firmly in his hand, the bird lets out a piercing screech. A bright light emanates from the Duke's powerful grip. The Duke and Claude stand together near the now empty cage. Wriggling desperately, the bird cheeps for the Duke to let it go. It continues to struggle, calling him a big bully as he remains silent. A menacing dune fills the air as the bird fears he's about to be hit. Bracing for impact, the bird bids farewell to the world as the Duke's hand tightens with a squeeze. Instead of violence, the Duke gently strokes the bird's head, causing it to tweet in surprise. Confused, the bird suddenly finds the petting incredibly relaxing. As the Duke rubs its cheek, the bird weakly protests. Quivering with a soft coo, it realizes the sensation is just ticklish.
The gentle stroking nearly lulls the little bird to sleep.
When the petting stops, the bird chirps indignantly, demanding to know why.
It grabs the Duke's finger, insisting he continue to stroke it just so.
Watching the exchange, Claude remarks on how cute the bird is. Claude agrees that it is cute, but his expression shifts to alarm as he calls out to the Duke.
The Duke smirks, finding it funny that the bird fears insects but not people, as Claude belatedly covers his ears.
The bird melts into the petting, enjoying the gentle touch.
With a sudden spring and a squirt, a strange sound is heard, catching Claude's attention. The bird looks up with a slightly guilty expression. The Duke stares down at his hand with a deadpan look.
The bird apologizes for its poor bowel control, reasoning that birds just go wherever. With a flutter of its wings, it flies away from the Duke's hand.
It lands on the table next to its cage with a soft plop.
The bird timidly apologizes for the mess it made. The Duke looks at his soiled hand, his expression unreadable.
A magical glow appears as he effortlessly cleans his hand.
The bird watches in awe as the light purifies the Duke's hand.
With a sudden flutter, the bird shivers dramatically.
It flies up with a flap, thinking, "What the heck?" in shock.
Claude marvels at how the mess disappeared, while the Duke calmly holds the bird, noting how clever it is to understand them.
As the Duke pets it, the bird begrudgingly admits he's good at it, despite its dislike for his tone.
Claude asks if the Duke is all right, and he replies that he's fine, though he didn't enjoy the experience.
The Duke holds the small bird, using his mana to hear its faint stomach rumble.
He stands with Claude before the dining table, holding the hungry little bird. A beautifully prepared plate of steak sits waiting on the table. The Duke looks down at the bird in his hand, Claude watching from behind.
With a soft peek, the bird looks out from between his fingers. The bird groans internally, plotting how to get some of the steak without being noticed.
With a determined hop, it lands on the desk to begin its quest.
It shuffles across the table towards the plates of food.
The bird hops closer with a hopeful peep as Claude watches in disbelief.
With its heart pounding, it steps onto the plate with a faint clink. The bird nervously gulps, deciding there's no turning back now.
With a swift whip, it grabs a piece of rosemary from the steak.
It takes a huge, determined bite with a loud nom.
The tiny bird struggles with a massive piece of steak in its beak.
It strains under the weight, trying to lift the comically large morsel. As Claude tries to remove the plate with a tug, the bird holds on for dear life, refusing to let go.
Claude apologizes and offers to bring a new dish, but the Duke calmly tells him to let the bird be.
With a quick whip, the Duke reaches for the plate.
He expertly slices a bite-sized piece of steak for the tiny bird.
With a soft whip, he offers the perfect piece to the bird on his fork. The Duke gently encourages the bird to eat, smiling as he confirms the food is for him.
With a happy cheep, the bird accepts the piece of steak set before it.
The Duke and the bird eat their respective meals in unison with a satisfied nom-nom.
The Duke chuckles, musing that the bird acts remarkably like a person.
As the bird happily eats, he revises his thought, deciding it's more like a greedy child.
The Duke looks on with an amused smile, telling the bird it will go far.
He dismisses Claude for the evening, who bows and confirms the order.
Claude leaves the room, leaving the Duke alone with his new companion.
The Duke sips his wine while reviewing a document as the bird sits contently on the table. As the bird flaps over to his letter, the Duke has a new thought. He realizes he has no idea what a normal bird's intelligence level even is, as his pet gulps nervously beside him.
Stuffed to the brim, the bird lands with a plop and lets out a satisfied huff.
The Duke watches the small, full creature and remains silent for a moment.
He slowly reaches his hand out towards the bird. He gives its round belly a gentle poke, causing it to erupt in a flurry of chirps and tweets. With a loud screech, the bird flies into the air as the Duke observes that food hasn't improved its temper. He reflects seriously that he's experienced more emotions recently than he has in a very long time. Wiping his mouth, he muses that no one has dared to act this way around him for centuries. He thinks that even if they had dared, he never would have tolerated it. Yet now he gently holds the defiant little bird in his hands. He walks over to the empty bird cage, still holding his pet. He hesitates at the cage door, considering putting the bird inside. Deciding against it, he closes the empty cage. With a soft flap, the bird lands atop the Duke's head as he lets out a thoughtful,
Now in more casual attire, the Duke holds a document as the bird proudly asks, "How's that?" thinking it's giving a great scalp massage.
The Duke sits peacefully with the little bird resting on his head. He holds the plump, confused bird in his hand. The bird reports its analysis is done, planning a massage for the busy Duke. It wonders what all the paperwork is that keeps him so occupied. With a determined grip and a tug, it tries to pull out a single page. With a soft whip, it successfully snags a document. A sudden whoosh sends the paper flying, startling the bird. It flaps into the air and catches the rogue paper with a triumphant nom. With a dramatic boom, it lands on a book, completely covered by the paper. It spins around with a swish, accidentally smearing ink on the document. The bird flies across the desk with the soiled paper in its beak. It glides over the paperwork, leaving a trail of ink splotches in its wake. It frantically tries to clean the mess with a scritch, only making it worse.
A dark shadow falls over the scene as the disaster unfolds.
The little bird sits proudly amidst the ink-stained chaos it created. The bird looks on with a devious expression, pleased with its help. The Duke and Claude return, and Claude gasps, asking what on earth happened. The Duke stares down at the mess with a grim expression. He takes in the sight of his ruined documents, splattered with ink. Looking down, he sees a trail of tiny, inky bird footprints on the floor. The inky tracks lead to the couch, where the bird is sleeping on a cushion.
Snuggled in, the bird bids a mental farewell to its comfy cushion and steak.
It stands shivering beside the cushion, leaving more inky footprints. With a sad sniffle, tears well up in the little bird's eyes. The Duke looks down at the tiny culprit with a stern face.
He suddenly erupts in a hearty laugh, "Bwah!" finding the situation hilarious.
Looking at the bird, the Duke realizes it still doesn't have a name. The little bird lets out a sad peep, acknowledging the fact.
The Duke decides that Peep has a nice ring to it. An air of disappointment settles in. Peep thinks to itself that the Duke isn't very creative with names.
Peep reflects on how long it's been since arriving at the Duke's estate. It muses that life is better now, even if it's just eating and sleeping. The Duke approaches the couch where Peep is resting comfortably on a pillow.
As the Duke smirks, Claude stifles a laugh with a quiet pfft.
Claude announces that Lord Valdez's deputy is waiting for him.
The scene transitions, showing an ornate hallway wall. While walking, the Duke asks Claude about the inquiries into Peep's origins.
Claude reports that the pet seller didn't know the bird's breed.
He adds that neither hunters nor the Imperial Library have any records of it.
The Duke finds the situation curious, concluding he's adopted a very rare bird. He opens a door with a soft creak. A blonde-haired man in a suit immediately springs to his feet. He walks towards them, his footsteps making a heavy thump on the floor. The man continues his purposeful thump, stopping directly in front of the Duke. A narration explains the existence of the Arma, a unique race with superior abilities.
This race is so powerful that people...
The Duke thinks how predictable it is that people call it a curse. The blonde man praises the Duke's hard work in revitalizing Sivan.
Claude observes the man's overly polished mannerisms with suspicion.
The blonde man presents his report, concluding that something is definitely wrong.
As they sit opposite each other, a tense thump fills the room.
With a soft clack, the blonde man departs, his expression grim.
His footsteps echo down the hall with a steady step.
Once alone, the man lets out a relieved sigh with a quiet, "Phew."
The Duke sits alone in the lavish room while Claude stands by the window.
The Duke tells Claude it's time to pay an unofficial visit to Savon. Claude asks if the Duke will go himself, to which he confirms with a yes.
As he sips his tea, the Duke reflects on his long life. He declares that his friend Valdez is playing dirty with his property. The Duke begins to button up a fresh white shirt.
Held in the Duke's hands, Peep nestles into his hair, enjoying how springy it is.
Peep recalls testing the hair of all the other staff members.
It now sits atop a bald man's head as another man stifles a laugh with a fur.
Landing on the Duke's head, Peep coos, admiring his luscious locks.
Claude notes Peep's affection for the Duke's hair and offers to send staff with him on his trip, but the Duke declines, preferring to go alone as Peep overhears the familiar name Seven.
The Duke asks if Claude noticed the discrepancies in the records, and Claude confirms, pointing to the worker lists and taxes. As Peep happily flaps on his head, the Duke considers the situation with a thoughtful,
Deciding he's had enough, the Duke reaches up towards his head. With a swift whip, he plucks Peep from his hair, causing the bird to shriek in protest over its ruined nest.
Peep angrily tweets and cheeps, complaining that it's unfair he can't touch the Duke's hair when the Duke handles him so freely.
The Duke smirks, asking if he bothered the bird, prompting an indignant, "You think?"
He smiles, announcing he has business to attend to and must get ready.
Peep quietly wonders if the business is related to the Seven place it heard them mention. Ready to depart, the Duke stands beside a briefcase as Claude watches. The Duke confirms with Claude that the guild has been contacted, while Peep demands to know what business they're discussing and why he's being called cranky. Peep defensively argues that it isn't just a ball of rage and always has good reasons for losing its temper.
With a sly grin, the Duke distracts the bird by offering it a nice piece of steak for lunch. Peep grumbles to itself, accepting the bribe because it's just too nice. While Claude urges the Duke to take an escort, Peep hops onto the briefcase, asking what it's for.
Peep sniffs the bag with a disgusted P.E.U., thinking it smells funky.
With a thwomp, the curious bird crawls into the open briefcase, wondering if it's full of clothes.
Inside the bag, it rustles around, exploring its new hiding spot. Finding the dark interior surprisingly cozy, Peep drifts off to sleep with a happy Z's.
The black briefcase now sits closed on the ornate table.
The Duke's gloved hand firmly grips the handle of the briefcase.
He lifts the bag, now ready to depart.
He pauses for a moment before the grand golden-trimmed doors.
Dressed in a formal blue coat, the Duke stands with his briefcase. He reaches for the handle of a small drawer in a nearby desk. He opens the drawer, revealing a box of beautiful, sparkling gemstones. As they walk outside, Claude insists the Duke write if there's any trouble so he can send the royal guard. The Duke smiles, reminding his attendant that he's far older and more experienced than his appearance suggests. The Duke's expression turns serious and determined.
Claude smiles warmly, understanding the Duke's confidence.
The Duke gives a final simple instruction. Don't forget to feed Peep. Surprised by the request, Claude asks about telling Master Arthur, and the Duke suddenly recalls that Peep was originally for him. Walking toward the estate gates, the Duke decides to get another rare animal for Arthur from the same pet seller. Now mounted on a white horse, the Duke informs Claude he'll be gone for 10 days, and Claude wishes him a safe journey.
With a spirited gallop, the Duke rides his horse through a sun-dappled forest. The Duke reflects that while the Arma live long, their minds are fragile. He thinks of his predecessors who ended their lives from sheer boredom. He believed a similar lonely end awaited him after a long, empty life. He recalls a happier time, laughing warmly among his staff. Now in the present, he gazes peacefully up at the tall forest trees. He smiles, realizing that if he had given up, he never would have met Peep. With a happy clip-clop, he eagerly rides on, wanting to return to his little friend. A disoriented Peep wakes with a thud, thinking it's dying on a tilt-a-whirl.
After a hard whack, it scolds itself for foolishly falling asleep in the bag.
With a sudden "oh!" Peep realizes it must be trapped in the Duke's briefcase. It frantically cheeps and peeps, trying to get the Duke's attention. Its muffled peeps go unheard as the briefcase swings with the horse's gait.
The Duke smiles, mistaking the faint sound for a fond memory of Peep's voice.
Peep lets out a desperate tweet, but the Duke only seems to question the sound. With a final slump, Peep gives up, fearing it will die of motion sickness. Time passes as the afternoon sun begins to set.
The horse finally stops, and the Duke opens his bag with a dramatic doon, revealing the stowaway.
Shocked, the Duke drops to his knees with a defeated slump.
He apologizes for not noticing sooner, as an exhausted Peep weakly confirms it was trapped the whole time.
He gently holds the dazed little bird in his gloved hand. Sweating with concern, he tells the exhausted bird to hang on. He sets Peep on a large leaf to rest, promising to find it some food.
Peep gives him irresistible puppy dog eyes, and the Duke feels his resolve crumbling.
As the Duke turns to leave, Peep thinks he's finally recovered his senses. With a faint "gah," Peep's spirit seems to leave its body as it faints. The Duke whirls around in a panic, fearing the bird has stopped breathing. He leans in close, inspecting the motionless little fluff ball with worry. With a gentle touch, he feels its tiny heart beat with a steady badoom. He lets out a relieved woo, sweat beading on his forehead. Closing his eyes for a moment, he calms his racing heart. A soft, amused laugh escapes him. He realizes he was so flustered that he forgot he could have just used his hearing to check. He bursts into hearty laughter as his own heart thumps, while Peep demands to know what's so funny. The Duke looks down at the tiny bird with a fond, gentle smile. He carefully forages for something edible among the forest plants. Surrounded by flowers, he holds Peep and wonders about its mysterious origins. Later that night, he sits by a crackling campfire. Peep lets out a happy sigh after being fed. With a defiant glare, Peep offers the Duke a piece of what looks like jerky. With a sudden spring, Peep hops up, demanding the steak it was promised. As Peep protests, the Duke promises to get it steak at the next inn. Peep is skeptical, but the Duke gives a reassuring nod. The Duke smiles knowingly, making Peep suspect he can read its mind.
Peep decides that as long as the Duke is happy, it can wait.
With a quick swoosh, Peep zips back onto the Duke's shoulder. The Duke suddenly draws his sword, demanding to know who's there. Peep puffs up its chest and bravely echoes the challenge. His sword points toward the darkness of the surrounding woods. The forest is silent and still, hiding the source of the sound. A heavy boot takes a single, deliberate step out from the shadows.
A black-haired man with an obscured face insists he wasn't spying.
His face is revealed as he holds his hands up defensively, looking flustered. The Duke eyes him suspiciously while Peep, perched on his shoulder, greets him with, "Hey, good looking."
Peep chirps happily on the Duke's shoulder.
The man claims he wasn't there long, explaining he was just searching for a place to camp.
With his sword still drawn, the Duke silently considers the man's request to sit by the fire.
With a soft clink, the Duke sheathes his sword and grants permission, which Peep echoes.
The black-haired man watches the Duke with a thoughtful expression.
From atop the Duke's head, Peep observes the man's worn clothes, but decides he's still quite cute.
The traveler asks if Peep is his companion animal, leaving the Duke to wonder what that means.
The traveler explains it's an animal that is cherished like a family member.
Peep puffs up with pride, impressed that the traveler called it a companion animal.
Deciding the traveler seems decent, Peep hops off the Duke with a whip.
With a gentle flutter, Peep takes flight from the Duke's shoulder. The Duke swiftly snatches the bird mid-air with a quick grab.
He holds the captured Peep up for the surprised traveler to see. Cradled in the Duke's hand, Peep indignantly demands to be released. The Duke sits down, calmly holding the squirming bird in his hands.
He playfully spins Peep around, causing the bird to let out an angry fweet. The Duke flinches slightly at the piercing sound.
With a slip, Peep escapes his grasp, landing with a defiant glare and a flutter of its wings.
The traveler laughs as Peep lands on his knee, cheeping contentedly.
A dark aura emanates from the Duke as he glares at the traveler.
The traveler reassures the Duke he means no harm and asks the bird's name, to which the Duke replies, Peep. The traveler stifles a laugh at the simple name, earning a sharp command from the Duke to stop. The traveler smiles gently, allowing Peep to perch on his finger.
He formally introduces himself as Doel and says hello to Peep.
Peep affectionately peeps at Dole. Dole points at the Duke as Peep lets out a loud squawk.
Peep flaps around angrily, tweeting and cheeping in a frenzy.
The Duke's horse watches as Peep flutters past with an insistent cheep.
The horse's eyes widen in alarm.
With a loud bonk, the tiny bird collides with the horse's forehead.
Peep falls to the ground with a soft plop as the two men and the horse look on.
The dazed horse sees stars after the unexpected impact.
Lying on the ground, Peep's tiny spirit appears to leave its body. Both men look down with concern at the unconscious bird in the Duke's hands. Enraged, the Duke looms over a sweating Dole, demanding to know what he did to Peep. The Duke sends chills down Doral's spine with his cold stare as Doral offers a sincere apology.
Dole suggests laying the unconscious bird down somewhere soft.
The Duke narrows his eyes, warning Doyle not to try anything.
Peep is gently wrapped in a cloth and placed in the open briefcase to sleep.
The two men sit together in a heavy, awkward silence. Dole thinks the Duke is being excessive, but the Duke is determined to keep Peep from catching a cold. With a charming smile, the traveler reintroduces himself as Doel. Peep's mind races, repeating the name Doel in surprise.
A jolt of realization hits Peep.
Peep recalls a passage from a book identifying Doel as the romantic interest.
With a dramatic "Dune!" Peep has a shocking realization as it watches Doel.
The bird understands that the man caring for it is the story's protagonist, Karhan, Duke of Barths. The world dissolves into a cascade of static. As the horse reacts in shock, Peep's spirit leaves its body, recalling the button that brought it to this universe. An anguished thought echoes in the darkness. How could it have been so stupid? Peep realizes that in becoming a bird, its brain has shrunk. But finally, all the pieces of the puzzle come together. A memory of the novel resurfaces. Kurhan first meets Doel in a forest, just as a powerful whoosh of wind blows through the trees.
In the story, Karhan's interest is piqued by Doel, but he remains cool and reserved.
But in the present, a concerned Karhan breaks character, asking if Doel is all right.
Cradled in Karhan's hand, Peep wonders why the Duke is suddenly so expressive.
With a sudden "oh," Karhan holds the newly awakened Peep up for Doel to see.
Doel peeks over Karhan's shoulder with a grin, noting that the little bird is finally awake.
As Karhan remains silent, Peep scolds him internally for giving Doel the cold shoulder. Karhan carefully places the cloth back into his open briefcase.
Deciding to take matters into its own wings, Peep mentally labels Karhan Male 1 and Doel Male 3.
The little bird sighs, lamenting that it can't live the rest of its life as a side character in a BL novel.
With a thoughtful Peep seriously considers the average lifespan of a bird. Perched on Karhan's shoulder, a look of grim determination crosses its face. Peep resolves to see the story through to its conclusion as quickly as possible.
Treating it like a game, Peep feels confident that setting up two handsome men will be easy work.
It pictures a perfect romantic scene between Karhan and Doel.
Peep believes its mission is simple. Just sit back and let the main characters fall in love.
The plan immediately derails as both Karhan and Doel decide to part ways, shocking Peep. This story is supposed to have them travel to the village together, leaving Peep to wonder why they're separating.
Karhan's expression softens as he offers Doel his protection, promising to keep him safe.
Panicking as Doel walks away, Peep silently urges him to wait up. Taking direct action, Karhan launches Peep at the departing traveler, insisting he join them. After a soft plop onto Doel's head, Peep grabs onto his bag strap with a determined nom. With a mighty tug on Doel's hair, Peep gets the confused man's attention.
Hearing the commotion, Karhan looks back and calls out for Peep.
Flapping frantically, Peep angrily orders Doel to get on the horse so the story can finally begin.
With insistent chirps and tweets, Peep continues pulling on Doel's hair.
It gives him a final ultimatum, threatening to pull all his hair out.
As Doel reluctantly takes a step forward with a shuffle, Peep offers a word of encouragement. Doel shuffles nervously toward the horse where Karhan waits. He flinches slightly as he stands beside the Duke. Doel looks away shyly while Karhan gazes down at him with a gentle expression. After a moment of hesitation, Doel sheepishly asks if he could have a ride. Later, at an inn, Peep happily enjoys a fine meal, declaring it the best stuff ever. Satisfied that it successfully got Doel to join them, Peep watches the two men ride together. With a steady clip-clop, they travel on, Peep perched atop Karhan's head. Riding behind the Duke, Doel's hand wobbles and slips as he tries to keep his balance. The trio arrives in a bustling town, Peep still enjoying the view from its perch. At dinner, Karhan cheerfully admits he has no idea what's going on, as Peep continues to happily nom its food. The scene fades into darkness. In the quiet of the night, Karhan's eyes slowly open.
He lies in bed, watching Peep sleep on the pillow beside him.
Turning onto his side, he smiles fondly at the tiny sleeping bird. He gently pokes the snoring Peep before giving its beak a soft stroke. A gentle, affectionate smile graces Karhan's face. He sits up in bed, continuing to watch over his little companion.
With a soft clack, a wooden door swings open in a quiet alley.
Karhan stands alone in the quiet town street. He pulls up his dark hood, concealing his face as he walks. He proceeds alone down the empty, darkened street. The morning sun shines brightly through an open window.
With a big yawn, Peep wakes up, wondering where Karhan has gone.
Peep hops to the window and looks down at the bustling market below. Surveying the lively town, Peep marvels at how real the world feels, despite being a novel.
Peep suddenly spots a familiar figure and excitedly recognizes Dole in the crowd.
Flying toward him, Peep happily greets its lover boy. As Dole looks up, Peep decides this is the perfect chance to play matchmaker.
With a mental sparkle, Peep tries to magically compel Doyle to go to Karhan.
As it flaps its wings, Peep suddenly panics, realizing something is wrong.
A powerful urge builds as Peep realizes it's coming.
With a desperate squeeze, Peep tries to hold it in, worried about its reputation.
A sudden splash hits Dole's face as he smiles, oblivious.
The scene shifts to an elegant room as a voice expresses surprise that someone came.
A woman with long blue hair smiles warmly, saying it's an honor to meet her guest.
The woman asks Karhan about his feathered friend, but he dismisses her, wanting to get to business. With a pout and a grumble, the woman laments that she wanted to pet Peep.
She presents a file containing reports on taxes, income, and complaints.
With a quick whip, Karhan reviews the papers, noting someone has been illegally taxing merchants.
He sits on a red sofa, carefully reading through the incriminating documents.
Karhan realizes the situation is worse than he imagined, as if the person in question has completely changed.
The woman agrees he had a personality change, and Karhan notes the unbalanced accounts and missing people.
He concludes that he needs an official warrant to launch a proper investigation.
The illegally obtained report can't be used as a basis to request that warrant. He resolves to investigate Vadez himself, deciding the risk is worth the speed.
The woman offers a false warrant, boasting that forgery is their specialty.
After she initially declines due to the risk, Karhan's offer of payment convinces her to agree. Karhan asks how soon the forgery will be ready and how he can get in touch with her. He hands her a sparkling blue crystal, warning it only responds to his mana.
The woman slyly admires the crystal, recognizing its high quality.
She bids him farewell as he pulls up his hood to depart.
With a soft clack, he opens the door, but pauses before leaving.
He turns back, urgently requesting she investigate someone for him. Meanwhile, in the market, a smiling Doel watches Peep fly away.
With a quick turn, Peep tries to flee, making up an excuse about the stove.
Doyle's hand shoots out with a swift grab, catching the bird mid-air.
As a tear drips from his eye, Dole holds Peep and asks where it's going.
Elsewhere, Karhan walks through the bustling market square.
He stops by a pastry stand where a small boy is also admiring the sweets.
The stall is covered in an assortment of beautifully decorated pastries. Karhan thinks fondly of Peep, a small smile on his face. With a soft clack, the door to their inn room opens.
The door lets out a creak as Karhan enters, thinking he bought too many treats.
A sudden wave of chills runs down his spine.
With a whoosh, the wind blows the curtains open, revealing an empty room.
Karhan stands silently, staring at the empty bed.
Back with Dole, he splashes water on his face in a rustic room.
He wipes away tears, his face etched with sorrow.
Dole looks down at Peep with a weary but amused expression.
Peep angrily chirps, asking if Dole is sorry for laughing. With a small hic, Peep tries to stifle a giggle. Dole covers his mouth, trying and failing to hold back his laughter.
He completely loses it, laughing hard as he brushes his hair back. Peep stares in shock, wondering if this is a dark version of Dole.
Dole sits on the edge of the bed, smiling fondly at the tiny bird. A close-up shows Dole's gentle, amused smile.
With a soft pft, Dole tries to suppress another laugh.
He leans back, erupting into full-throated laughter. Peep internally fumes, insisting he tried to stop,
and blaming Newton for his predicament.
With a disgruntled humph, Peep turns away on the table.
Duel looks over with a fond, loving expression, surrounded by hearts.
As Duel tries to tickle him, Peep angrily swats his finger away. With a quick whip, Dole scoops up the bird, telling him not to sulk.
Peep flaps his wings furiously, tweeting that he is not sulking.
With a fierce glare, Peep proudly declares his dignity has been offended. A dramatic dune echoes as Dole is stunned into silence by the bird's audacity. Dole bursts into laughter once more, holding the proud bird in his hand. Peep sighs in resignation, lamenting the man's amusement. Dole clears his throat with an ahem, finally composing himself.
He apologizes for laughing at Peep's cuteness and suggests they call it even. Dazed, Peep questions the deal, reminding Dole that he pooped on his face.
While Peep wonders if this is because he's a fictional character, Duel smiles, thinking he'll live another day.
A hand gently cups Peep as Karhan asks if he is lost.
Peep lets out a joyful tweet and flies into the air in surprise.
As Peep taps on the door, Karhan asks if he wants to go out.
With an impatient flutter, Peep urges Karhan to open the door. Peep chirps loudly, telling Karhan to follow him.
Karhan is left standing alone, completely bewildered.
Peep flies ahead, leading a following Karhan through a town square.
Catching up, Karhan asks what the big emergency is.
A dramatic dadoon marks the appearance of a handsome, blue-eyed man in a cloak.
A voice calls out for Peep.
Peep happily flies from Karhan towards the cloaked man.
The cloaked man presents Peep, announcing that he brought him. Peep happily coos and clasps onto the man's robe.
The cloaked man gently holds the happy bird to his chest. He looks on with a serious and intense expression. Karhan stares at the scene, utterly shocked.
Later, Karhan and the blue-eyed man sit across from each other at a table.
The blue-eyed man lights a pipe while Peep sits calmly on his shoulder.
The man thanks Karhan for taking care of Peep and offers his help in return. As Karhan politely declines, Peep suddenly slaps the blue-eyed man across the face.
Peep glares defiantly from the man's shoulder, wings outstretched.
The blue-eyed man looks at Peep, slightly surprised by the assault.
He ignores it and with a Peep lets out a horrified gasp at the sight of the smoking pipe. With another sharp slap, Peep hits the man's face again, leaving him speechless. With a soft clink, the blue-eyed man sets his pipe down on the table. Soaked and smiling, Dole struggles to suppress his laughter.
With a strained smile, Doyle announces that he must be going.
Karhan confronts Dole, asking if he's a mercenary for hire.
Karhan reveals he investigated Dole for lying, but Dole asks if that was the only reason. Dole admits he was on a job when he followed him, surprising Karhan.
As Karhan looks at Peep, the flustered bird tells him to never mind. Karhan offers to double Doyle's pay for information, as Peep silently cheers him on. Duel refuses, explaining his client opposes Lord Valdez, creating a conflict of interest. As Peep urges them to make up, Karhan reveals he's also investigating Valdez. When asked if he'll punish Valdez, Karhan confirms he will if necessary. Dole explains his client's son was sent to work as a slave for Lord Valdez.
The son began acting strangely until one day he disappeared completely.
After being denied entry to Valdez's house, the client hired Duel to investigate.
Karhan understands the situation as he gently pets a nodding Peep.
Looking shocked but hopeful, Dole asks if Karhan truly means to help. Karhan connects the disappearance to rumors of drifters being sold as slaves and asks Dole if he has a plan.
With an excited, "Now you're talking," Dole asks about the plan as Peep gulps nervously.
Disguised as hobos, Dole questions Karhan's bright idea, but Karhan is confident in their low profile.
Peep realizes the entire plan might be an excuse for Karhan to have a midnight stroll with Doel.
With a sly tee-hee, Peep mentally praises Karhan for being a sly fox.
2 village patrolmen stop them, asking if they're drifters, confirming Doel's fears.
As Karhan plays innocent, he knocks one of the guards down, asking if there's a problem. The remaining guard questions Karhan's traveler story, demanding he surrender.
With a powerful pow, Karhan strikes the guard as Doel watches in shock. The guard's unconscious thoughts reveal they sell people to a young master, enraging Peep.
As the guards laugh in a flashback, Peep decides it wants to peck their heads in. The scene shifts to a grand, imposing mansion at night. The patrolmen present their choice goods, Karhan and Doel, at the mansion. One guard nervously presents the captured men to a figure in the dark. A bald man with large sideburns thoughtfully inspects the 2 cloaked figures. The man expresses their height, but is annoyed by Karhan's defiant posture.
With a loud thwack, Karhan strikes a guard and Peep flies in to protest the violence.
The bald man dismisses the commotion, ordering his men to unhood Karhan.
As the hood is slipped off, Karhan's sharp, determined eyes are revealed. Kneeling with his hands tied, a smirking Karhan calls the experience novel to a shocked Lord Valdez. Lord Valdez stares in disbelief, asking an odd question in his shock. Later, back in his study, Karhan hears a knock-knock as Doel announces his arrival. Dole enters with a folder, informing Karhan that the papers he requested have arrived. Dale sets the requested documents on the desk before Karhan. Karhan opens the folder as Peep senses trouble with the documents. Dole questions Karhan's comparison of 2 letters, noting they aren't financial records.
Karhan points out that the documents have been altered, stunning Doel.
Perched on Karhan's shoulder, Peep declares bingo, realizing they've been caught red-handed.
Dole explains that Lord Valdez's house is in chaos as they try to hide their misdeeds.
With a soft plop, Peep lands directly on the stack of documents held by Valdez.
Startled, Valdez looks down to see the tiny bird letting out a defiant cheep.
Peep continues to stand its ground, letting out another loud cheep. The bird stares down the Lord with a determined tweet. As Valdez leans closer, Peep wiggles and lets out a triumphant fweet.
Karhan watches as Valdez stares in horror at the fresh bird dropping on his pristine documents.
Lord Valdez stares in shocked horror. Enraged, Valdez orders his men to catch the bird as an attendant tries to calm him. Peep smugly reflects on the satisfying chaos, preparing to deliver its report.
In an office, Doel informs Karhan about a suspicious servant with access to Valdez's room. With a soft clack, a door opens to reveal an empty room.
Doel explains that a blonde servant regularly takes books from the room, so he followed him.
The servant's trail led to a remote shed, which Karhan identifies as a potential hideout. Karhan proposes infiltrating the shed for trafficking evidence, but Doel argues it's too risky.
Karhan counters that they must act fast before evidence is destroyed, suspecting Valdez has palace connections.
Leaning close, Karhan insists they must find the missing people as soon as possible.
Peep notes Dole's urgency, but is more interested in how close he and Karhan are getting.
Karhan agrees to help, telling Dole to proceed with his investigation. A determined Dole promises to be careful, as Peep excitedly insists on joining the mission. Karhan asks Peep if it wants to go, and the bird eagerly chirps its assent. Smiling, Karhan encourages Peep to do its best while giving it an affectionate pat.
With a confident smirk, Doel waves goodbye to Karhan, promising to be right back.
Outside a shed, 2 guards mock Lord Valdez, calling him a lazy swindler.
With a sudden whoosh, Peep drops down from above, surprising one of the guards.
The tiny bird flaps its wings with determined energy.
With a swift whip, Peep throws a small projectile at the guard's feet.
The guard recognizes the bird, calling out its name as Peep turns around.
Peep proudly struts forward with its prize, calling out its own name as a distraction.
The guard looks on, dazed and utterly confused by the bird's strange behavior. The guards clumsily fumble with their rifles, caught completely off guard. A sudden wham from behind knocks the red-haired guard unconscious. With a powerful pow, a masked Doel kicks the second guard. The guard goes down with a crash as Doel lands gracefully. Duel tells a quivering Peep to be quiet, realizing his companion has some hidden talents.
Back in his study, Karhan sits alone at his desk.
He stands and gazes thoughtfully out the window.
Sensing the others moving away, he slips a hand into his coat.
He stares at a glowing blue crystal in his palm. As the crystal shines, Karhan decides it's time for him to make his move. Inside the shed, Peep discovers a massive pile of treasure, chirping in amazement. With a delighted fleet, Peep rolls around in the jewels, amazed by the discovery. It wriggles excitedly, wishing it had hands to carry away the loot. Peep spots a particular necklace, thinking it would look perfect on Karhan. Holding up its chosen jewelry, Peep decides it's the one.
Peep flies the necklace over to Doel, who is sorting through documents on the floor.
Dole smiles, believing Peep has found the evidence they were looking for.
With a soft clap, a pleased Dole closes a book.
He turns with a charming smile, asking if he was gone too long. Peep, wearing its new necklace, notes how pleased Duel seems. Shaking its head, Peep vigorously denies he took too long. Outside, the two guards remain unconscious by the shed door.
With a clack, Dole exits the shed, where one guard now sits tied and gagged.
As Dole plans their escape, a blonde-haired man appears and tells them the fun is over. Duel freezes, staring at the unexpected arrival outside the shed.
The mysterious blonde man smiles, his red eyes glinting in the dark.
He reaches out his hand in a welcoming yet menacing gesture.
A sudden wave of chills runs down Dole's spine as he turns to face the figure.
The blonde man, Karhan, greets him with a knowing smirk.
Peep, wearing its new necklace, realizes they've been busted. With a sudden whoosh, Peep takes flight as Dole shouts for it to stop. Karhan easily catches the fleeing bird with a swift whip. Held in Karhan's hand, Peep sadly realizes its master will never get the necklace.
The tiny beads on the necklace let out a faint jingle.
Peep sits defeated in the palm of Karhan's hand. As Doel tries to run, Karhan calmly calls out Peep's name. Karhan bursts into laughter, amused by the situation and asking Doel if he's trying to perform a comedy act.
Dole stops in his tracks, a tear welling in his eye as he stares back in silence.
With a sly smile, Karhan reveals Lord Valdez ordered him to guard the account book. Duel's hand tightens its grip on the book. Internally, Dole disagrees with Karhan's claim as Peep lets out a supportive tweet. The two men stand facing each other in a tense standoff in the woods.
A voice declares that their little confrontation will now be settled.
With a radiant whoosh, Karhan reveals his powerful aura. He reaches out his hand, a magical energy flowing from his fingertips. Perched on Duel's shoulder, Peep senses a strange, familiar feeling from the magic. As Dole takes a surprised step back, he calls out Peep's name.
Feeling his legs move on their own, Duel throws the book with a whip as Peep flies to intercept.
With a whoosh and a triumphant fleet, Peep deftly catches the book in midair. Flapping its wings furiously, Peep screeches its vow to protect Doyle. Karhan watches the display with amused interest, letting out a soft "oh-ho."
A confident smile plays on his lips as an energy swooshes around him.
His body begins to glow with a brilliant, sparkling light. Karhan's silhouette stands poised and ready. He catches the bird and gives it a gentle squeeze, curiously inspecting his prize.
Karan looks at the defiant bird, wondering why a creature like it possesses no mana.
Duel watches helplessly, letting out a pained groan.
Peep struggles in Karhan's grasp, mentally screaming to be let go.
An ominous, deep hum fills the air as Peep's eyes widen.
With a mighty swoosh, a blinding light erupts from Peep as it calls for help. 2 points of light glow brightly on Karhan's knuckles. A brilliant flash of light illuminates the entire forest.
As Karhan looks on, a stunned Doyle wonders if he's just witnessed a shifter.
A narration recalls the long-lost race of shifters, people who could transform into animals.
The light fades to reveal a young, white-haired man.
With a final swoosh, the figure falls from the sky.
The naked white with a spring, Dole quickly catches him, anxiously asking if he's all right.
The man, Peep's human form, looks up at Dole with a bashful, blushing face.
Karhan's red eyes glint with amusement as he finds the situation far more fun than expected.
As a cloak is gently slipped over him, the white-haired man asks what could possibly be fun about this.
Karhan brandishes a knife, casually dismissing the shifter's appearance as nothing out of the ordinary.
Dole stares back, realizing the blonde man is far more dangerous than he imagined.
A massive red bird lets out a piercing shriek, taunting that they can't beat it.
The creature's cry continues to echo through the night. Startled by the sudden jolt, Dole prepares for a fight, but Karhan calmly pats the bird, reassuring him it's there for him. With his dagger drawn, Dole asks in shock if Karhan is working for Lord Valdez.
With a condescending smirk, Karhan dismisses his opponent as not being much fun.
Lying on the ground, Peep looks up at the two men, thinking the situation is far more promising.
Dole lets out a pained groan, distressed by the turn of events.
With a soft step, the blonde man approaches, hoping the shifter is still alive.
With a great whoosh, Karhan flies off on his massive red bird, bidding Doel farewell.
Duel slumps beside the unconscious shifter, whispering his name, and relieved to find he's still breathing.
A sudden rustle from the nearby bushes signals someone's approach.
A dark-haired man with blue eyes watches from the trees as Doyle carries the unconscious boy.
Doyle is startled as the man appears, asking how his grace found him.
The man stares at the boy in Doyle's arms, asking who he is and where Peep went. Duel looks down at the unconscious white-haired boy, unsure how to explain the situation. The scene shifts to a grand moonlit estate. With a sharp flip, the dark-haired man presents papers to a sweating Lord Valdez who feigns confusion.
His grace glares at him, saying his name with utter contempt.
He continues, stating that any fool could see through Valdez's deception.
Panicked, Lord Valdez shouts for his guards, who quickly appear.
His grace calmly gives an order to seize Lord Valdez immediately.
As a guard grabs him, Valdez protests the lack of a warrant, desperately looking for an ally.
A firm knock-knock sounds at the door as Valdez anticipates his rescue.
A blue-haired woman enters, presenting his grace with the official warrant.
Holding the newly arrived warrant, the man formally places Lord Valdez under arrest.
As the guards drag the wobbling lord away, he rambles about his partner, while his grace orders them to proceed.
The dark-haired man lets out a soft musing that the master and servant are alike.
Later, he and the blue-haired woman share a laugh over tea as she boasts of their expertise.
She explains that his mana stone alerted her, but warns that the forged documents won't fool them for long.
With a crisp whip, he hands her a letter for his estate, which she accepts.
The woman teasingly apologizes for missing his feathered friend, whom she's heard is adorable.
The dark-haired man gives her an unamused, deadpan stare.
Looking out the window, he quietly thinks of Peep. The scene transitions through a rustle of leaves. Back in the forest, His Grace introduces the unconscious boy in Doel's arms as Peep. Duel clarifies that Peep is, in fact, a shifter. The dark-haired man's hand moves with purpose. With a gentle swish, he cups Peep's face, causing the sleeping boy to blush. His Grace now holds Peep tenderly in his arms. Dole stares at the scene, completely stunned. Waking slightly, Peep weakly grasps the man's shirt with a pained sound. The man holds the shifter close, turning away. A dark memory surfaces, with voices calling someone a useless brat and a nuisance. The memory focuses on the back of a young blonde boy's head. A blurry, pained vision of a man's face flashes through the boy's mind.
Peep's eyes flutter open as he wakes up in a luxurious bed.
Still groggy, he gives a small wave from under the covers.
He realizes the dark-haired man is sitting on the edge of his bed. The man looks down at him with a gentle, knowing smile.
Peep suddenly realizes the man's call was much longer than just his name.
He lights up with pure, unadulterated joy. Amused by his reaction, the dark-haired man lets out a soft pft.
Peep smiles shyly, wondering if Karhan has also been dying to talk to him.
Their eyes meet in a charged moment, a soft badoom echoing the beating of a heart. A hand gently pats his head as Peep bashfully denies the man's observation. Holding Peep, the dark-haired man exclaims in surprise, noting that he feels smaller now.
He stares intently, processing this strange new information.
Peep pauses, a sudden realization dawning on him. As birds chirp peacefully outside, he wonders if he's truly human again. He looks down at his own hands and body in utter shock. Sitting beside him on the bed, the dark-haired man listens as Peep asks for clarification. With a gentle smile, the man announces that it's time for him to leave. As the door creaks, he explains he has work to do, leaving a disappointed Peep behind.
Peep is left all alone in the vast, opulent bedroom. A quiet moment passes in the silent room.
Suddenly, a loud rumble comes from his stomach. He glances down in confusion, wondering about the unexpected sound. He touches a strand of his hair, shocked to find it has turned completely white. With a dramatic doon, he fears he's suddenly aged into a grandpa. With a frustrated pow pow, he worries he'll die before seeing the novel's romance unfold. He laughs manically, resigning himself to his strange fate as a geriatric shifter. A soft sniffle escapes him as he turns, hearing someone approach.
Duel arrives with a tray of food, a warm smile on his face.
With a soft clink, he sets down the covered dish on the table. Peep asks Duel in disbelief if he has truly been asleep for 5 days. Duel confirms it, mentioning how worried His Grace was, much to Peep's relief. As he fidgets, Peep imagines the man's worried expressions, wishing he could have seen them.
He giggles, wondering if it makes him a bad person to feel so flattered.
Duel cheerfully clarifies that it was just his personal observation. Another loud rumble echoes through the room, causing Peep to flush with embarrassment. Duel laughs kindly, telling him it's okay, and Peep timidly agrees. With a sly tap to his own cheek, Dole reminds him of a previous, less than dignified incident.
Peep struggles to remember, then lets out a horrified ack as a sudden memory makes him blush intensely.
A memory flashes of his bird form, feeling an urgent sensation building. With a mighty squeeze, he tries desperately to hold it in, worried about his reputation. But with a sudden squirt, his efforts fail completely. An unfortunate splash hits Doe directly in the face. Duel sighs, lamenting the horrifying realization that it was human feces, not a bird's.
With a thunderous do-doon, Peep grasps the mortifying implication of his action. Dole simply laughs it off, chalking it up to his usual bad luck.
The two share a moment of amusing awkwardness at the dining table.
Dole playfully stretches Peep's cheek, reassuring him that he was just kidding.
As the chair creaks, Dole offers to help, noting that Peep is still weak. With a clink, Doel reveals the meal, and Peep thinks it looks delicious.
Steam gently puffs from a simple bowl of gruel.
With a quick whip, he picks up his spoon, deciding gruel is perfect for his supposedly old teeth.
Dole playfully holds up a spoonful of food, telling him to say ah.
Peep glares back at him, completely unamused by the gesture.
He eats with a reluctant nom-nom, thinking how kind Dole is for feeding the person who pooped on him.
Dole looks on in confusion as Peep seems to be wrestling with a thought. With a great gra, Peep suddenly erupts, shouting a loud and heartfelt apology. Dole completely loses it, bursting into boisterous laughter at the sudden outburst.
Pouting, Peep glares and immediately regrets his apology as Doyle continues to laugh uncontrollably.
Wiping away a tear of laughter, Dole says a cheerful goodbye to Peep, explaining that he has to leave. Peep asks Dole where he's going, but Dole explains he must return to work.
Thinking this is goodbye, Peep suddenly recalls Dole and Karhan's temporary breakup in the novel.
Dole gives the blushing Peep a gentle pat on the head.
Peep comically scolds him, warning against patting an old gray beard on the head.
Dole stares back, momentarily speechless at the bizarre comment. He can't hold it in and lets out a snicker, apologizing for his amusement. Promising to return soon, Dwell bids a kind farewell to Peep.
Alone again, Peep sleeps soundly in the sunlit room.
A maid enters with a bow, announcing it's time for his morning wash. She wrings out a cloth with a tight squeeze, letting water trickle into the basin. With a sad droop, Peep realizes it's been 2 days with no sign of Karhan. He wonders if Karhan is avoiding him because he's no longer a cute bird but an old man. The maid begins to gently wipe his arm. With a quiet sigh, Peep wonders if Karhan is simply too busy for him.
Misunderstanding his sigh, the maid quickly apologizes, thinking she hurt him.
With a small sniffle, Peep tearfully promises to be gentle.
The scene shifts to the grand estate under a dark sky.
Sitting alone at the table, Peep sadly notes that Karhan didn't come today either. Elsewhere, the handsome Karhan appears with a serious expression. The camera pans down, focusing on his strong physique. In a memory, Peep sniffles, asking if Karhan dislikes him, but Karhan reassures him he's just been busy. He sadly concludes that Karhan has Dole now, imagining them in a warm embrace. A single tear escapes as the heartbreaking thought consumes him. As he starts to protest, a hand gently slips under his chin. He looks up to find Karhan standing right in front of him.